The best illustration that I can give is in reference to John Jacob Astor, who was a poor boy and who made all the money of the Astor family. He made more than his successors have ever earned, and yet he once held a mortgage on a millinery store in New York, and because the people could not make enough money to pay the interest and the rent, he foreclosed the mortgage and took possession of the store and went into partnership with the man who had failed. He kept the same stock, did not give them a dollar capital, and he left them alone, and went out and sat down upon a bench in the park. Out there on that bench in the park he had the most important, and to my mind the pleasantest part of that partnership business. He was watching the ladies as they went by, and where is the man that wouldn't get rich at that business? But when John Jacob Astor saw a lady pass, with her shoulders back and her head up, as if she did not care if the whole world looked on her, he studied her bonnet. And before that bonnet was out of sight, he knew the shape of the frame and the color of the trimmings, the curl of the something on a bonnet. Sometimes I try to describe a woman's bonnet. This is of little use, for it would be out of style tomorrow night. So John Jacob Astor went to the store and said, "Now, put in the show window just such a bonnet as I described to you, because," said he, "I have just seen a lady who likes just such a bonnet. Do not make up any more till I come back." And he went out again and sat on that bench in the park, and another lady of a different form and complexion passed him, with a bonnet of different shape and color, of course. "Now," said he, "put such a bonnet as that in the show window." He didn't fill his show window with hats and bonnets which drive people away, and then sit in the back of the store and bawl because the people go somewhere else to trade. He didn't put a hat or bonnet in that show window the like of which he had not seen before it was made up. In our city especially there are great opportunities for manufacturing. And the time has come when the line is drawn very sharply between the stockholders of the factory and their employees. Now, friends, there has also come a discouraging gloom upon this country, and the laboring men are beginning to feel that they are being held down by a crust over their heads through which they find it impossible to break, and the aristocratic money owner himself is so far above that he will never descend to their assistance. That is the thought that is in the minds of our people. But, friends, never in the history of our country was there an opportunity so great for the poor man to get rich as there is now in the city of Philadelphia. The very fact that they get discouraged is what prevents them from getting rich. That is all there is to it. The road is open, and let us keep it open between the poor and the rich. I know that the labor unions have two great problems to contend with, and there is only one way to solve them. The labor unions are doing as much to prevent its solving as are the capitalists today, and there are positively two sides to it. The labor union has two difficulties. The first one is that it began to make a labor scale for all classes on a par, and they scaled down a man that can earn $5 a day to $2.50 a day in order to level up to him an imbecile that cannot earn 50 cents a day. That is one of the most dangerous and discouraging things for the working man. He cannot get the results of his work if he do better work or higher work or work longer. That is a dangerous thing, and in order to get every laboring man free and every American equal to every other American, let the laboring man ask what he is worth and get it. Not let any capitalist say to him, "You shall work for me for half of what you are worth." Nor let any labor organization say, "You shall work for the capitalist for half your worth." Be a man, be independent, and then shall the laboring man find the road ever open from poverty to wealth. The other difficulty that the labor union has to consider, and this problem they have to solve themselves, is the kind of orators who come and talk to them about the oppressive rich. I can, in my dreams, recite the oration I have heard again and again under such circumstances. My life has been with the labouring man. I am a labouring man myself. I have often, in their assemblies, heard the speech of the man who has been invited to address the labour union. The man gets up before the assembled company of honest labouring men, and he begins by saying, "O ye honest, industrious labouring men, who have furnished all the capital of the world, who have built all the palaces, and constructed all the railroads, and covered the ocean with her steamships. O you labouring men, you are nothing but slaves. You are ground down in the dust by the capitalist who is gloating over you as he enjoys his beautiful estates, and as he has his banks filled with gold, and every dollar he owns is coined out of the heart's blood of the honest labouring man." Now, that is a lie, and you know it is a lie. And yet that is the kind of speech that they are all the time hearing, representing the capitalists as wicked and the labouring men so enslaved. Why, how wrong it is! Let the man who loves his flag and believes in American principles endeavor with all his soul to bring the capitalist and the labouring man together until they stand side by side and arm in arm and work for the common good of humanity. He is an enemy to his country who sets capital against labour or labour against capital. Suppose I were to go down through this audience and ask you to introduce me to the great inventors who live here in Philadelphia. The inventors of Philadelphia, you would say. Why? Well, we don't have any in Philadelphia. It is too slow to invent anything. But you do have just as great inventors. And they are here in this audience as ever invented a machine. But the probability is that the greatest inventor to benefit the world with his discovery is some person, perhaps some lady, who thinks she could not invent anything. Did you ever study the history of invention and see how strange it was that the man who made the greatest discovery did it without any previous idea that he was an inventor? Who are the great inventors? They are persons with plain, straightforward common sense, who saw a need in the world and immediately applied themselves to supply that need. If you want to invent anything, don't try to find it in the wheels in your head, nor the wheels in your machine, but first find out what the people need, and then apply yourself to that need. And this leads to invention on the part of the people you would not dream of before. The great inventors are simply great men. The greater the man, the more simple the man, and the more simple a machine, the more valuable it is. Did you ever know a really great man? His ways are so simple, so common, so plain, that you think anyone could do what he is doing. So it is with the great men the world over. If you know a really great man, a neighbour of yours, you can go right up to him and say, "How are you, Jim? Good morning, Sam." Of course you can, for they are always so simple. When I wrote the life of General Garfield, one of his neighbours took me to his back door and shouted, "Jim, Jim, Jim!" And very soon Jim came to the door, and General Garfield let me in, one of the grandest men of our century. The great men of the world are ever so. I was down in Virginia and went up to an educational institution and was directed to a man who was setting out a tree. I approached him and said, "Do you think it would be possible for me to see General Robert E. Lee, the president of the university?" He said, "Sir, I am General Lee." Of course, when you meet such a man, so noble a man as that, you will find him a simple, plain man. Greatness is always just so modest, and great inventions are simple. I asked a class in school once who were the great inventors, and a little girl popped up and said, "Columbus." Well, now, she was not so far wrong. Columbus bought a farm, and he carried on that farm just as I carried on my father's farm. He took a hoe and went out and sat down on a rock. But Columbus, as he sat upon that shore and looked out upon the ocean, noticed that the ships, as they sailed away, sank deeper into the sea the farther they went. And since that time some other Spanish ships have sunk into the sea. But as Columbus noticed that the tops of the masts dropped down out of sight, he said, "That is the way it is with this hoe handle. If you go around this hoe handle, the farther off you go, the farther down you go. I can sail around to the East Indies." How plain it all was! How simple the mind, majestic like the simplicity of a mountain in its greatness. Who are the great inventors? They are ever the simple, plain, everyday people who see the need and set about to supply it. I was once lecturing in North Carolina, and the cashier of the bank sat directly behind a lady who wore a very large hat. I said to that audience, "Your wealth is too near to you. You're looking right over it." He whispered to his friend, "Well, then, my wealth is in that hat." A little later, as he wrote me, I said, "Wherever there is a human need, there is a greater fortune than a mine can furnish." He caught my thought, and he drew up his plan for a better hat pin than was in the hat before him. And the pin is now being manufactured. He was offered $55,000 for his patent. That man made his fortune before he got out of that hall. This is the whole question. Do you see a need? I remember well a man up in my native hills, a poor man, who for 20 years was helped by the town in his poverty, who owned a wide-spreading maple tree that covered the poor man's cottage like a benediction from on high. I remember that tree, for in the spring, there were some roguish boys around that neighborhood when I was young, in the spring of that year, the man would put a bucket there and the spouts to catch the maple sap. And I remember where that bucket was. And when I was young, the boys were so mean that they went to that tree before that man had gotten out of bed in the morning, and after he had gone to bed at night, and drank up that sweet sap. I could swear they did it. He didn't make a great deal of maple sugar from that tree, but one day he made the sugar so white and crystalline that the visitor did not believe it was maple sugar, thought maple sugar must be red or black. He said to the old man, "Why don't you make it that way and sell it for confectionery?" The old man caught his thought and invented the rock maple crystal. And before that patent expired, he had $90,000 and had built a beautiful palace on the site of that tree. After 40 years owning that tree, he awoke to find it had fortunes of money indeed in it. And many of us are right by the tree that has a fortune for us, and we own it, possess it, do what we will with it, but we do not learn its value because we do not see the human need. And in these discoveries and inventions, this is one of the most romantic things of life.